Hi, thank you for tuning in to the latest Hurricane Tracker app video update recorded Wednesday, July 2nd at around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Well, over the next 24 to 36 hours, we're going to be closely watching Tropical Storm Arthur. The system is right on the verge of becoming a Category 1 hurricane. As of the latest National Hurricane Center advisory at 8 o'clock Eastern Time tonight, maximum sustained winds are at 70 miles per hour. In order for the storm to reach hurricane force, the National Hurricane Center needs to see data that would support winds of 74 miles per hour or greater. The system is moving to the north at 8 miles per hour. It has gained forward speed. Earlier today it was moving at about 3-4 miles per hour, so it's moving quicker to the north. And here's the cone of uncertainty, which stretches all the way up, believe it or not, to Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So yes, even you folks in extreme northeastern New England as well as southeastern Canada need to pay close attention to this system over the next few days. But the immediate concern is going to be the effects of Tropical Storm Arthur here on the southeastern United States coast. The main question tonight is, are we going to get indirect effects along South Carolina and North Carolina coastlines, or are we going to get a direct impact, meaning a landfall or a situation where the center may ride a portion of the coastline? So we're watching trends very carefully. But in case you haven't heard, we do have tropical storm warnings in effect for the northeastern coast of South Carolina. We have a hurricane watch in effect for the southwestern coast of North Carolina, and there's also tropical storm warnings in effect there over extreme southwestern North Carolina. And we have hurricane warnings in effect for the Outer Banks, and even tropical storm warnings extending up towards the Virginia Beach area. Looking at the latest satellite loop, you can see that Tropical Storm Arthur is a very healthy tropical cyclone. It has a good outflow channel. That means the system has a really good structure, and it can continue to draw off of the warm Gulf Stream waters and continue to produce convection and thunderstorms. Now, if you notice, you'll see that I'm going to draw a line down the middle of the storm here. Let me clear this out. You'll see on this side of the storm, it looks very healthy. There's lots of deep reds and oranges and yellows, meaning lots of deep convection. But over here on the east, on the westerly side, it looks a little more ragged, and that's because the system is still battling with some dry air here located over South Carolina. And you can see the darker colors here is where that dry air pool resides. But if you look at the latest trends, you can see we have some moisture streaming out of the Gulf of Mexico, and we anticipate this will continue to erode this dry air layer and push it off to the northeast. And then in the next 12 hours or so, this system should not have to deal with much more dry air as it continues to lift off towards the north. Now, the system is moving to the north, and that is important because for every hour that it continues to move north, it's going to get closer and closer to the United States coastline. And if you're looking at the latest plots here, I know this is old school, but sometimes you have to look at the specific plots to get a good idea of what's happening. Over the next couple of hours, the Hurricane Center, this is where the storm is located as of the latest Hurricane Hunter reconnaissance mission. And over the next few hours, the National Hurricane Center is forecasting a bend towards the north-northeast, then eventually off towards the northeast by tomorrow morning. The system is still moving towards the north, and it looks like it's going to pass this forecast point just a little bit to the west. And this is important because the quicker it can turn towards the east, the least likely that the system, the inner core, would stay off of the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And if you've been following us, we do have a upper level trough that is swinging out over the Ohio Valley, and southwesterly winds ahead of that is going to not only help strengthen the system as it taps into that energy, but it's going to also help turn the storm to the northeast. And it's just a matter of timing as to when the storm, this Tropical Storm Arthur, can meet up with the southwesterly wind. So if that happens a little bit later, the chances would be increased that we could see a direct impact, meaning a landfall, or a brush with the coast, where this system, the inner core, could actually end up riding the coastline of North Carolina. And of course, that would not be a good scenario. So based on all the latest data, really anywhere south of Savannah, the Georgia-South Carolina border, we don't see any threat of being impacted by any major feeder bands or impacts from a landfall. But here from southwestern South Carolina up through the rest of the South Carolina coastline and up through North Carolina, the further north and east you go, the higher the risk gets that you could be impacted substantially in some way from future Hurricane Arthur. And again, the latest forecast track from the National Hurricane Center just rides it roughly 20-25 miles right off the coast. And if that's the case, we could even see some tropical storm force winds here into southeastern Virginia, and that's why the Hurricane Center has issued those tropical storm warnings for the Virginia Beach area. Most of the computer models agree on a scenario where the storm will come out of the southwest and just basically hug the coast. The heaviest winds are going to be on the north and east side of the system. So that means the worst weather, the strongest winds will remain offshore, but we could still see an area of 80 to 90 mile per hour sustained winds here along the Outer Banks if the current forecast track codes and the computer models are correct. Of course, there is always a chance that the system could come in a little further westerly here and move up closer towards Morehead City and sit directly over the Outer Banks here. So that would be one of the worst scenarios. But either way we're looking at it, the system is going to be close enough to cause at least some indirect effects. But definitely hurricane warnings are in place for a reason, and continue to follow the National Hurricane Center forecast very closely. Here's a look at another model. This is the GFS model, the American model, a run from this afternoon. And I'm going to draw the European model, which is one of the most accurate models. The European model basically has the system coming right off of the coast, and the GFS model now has it coming into the coast. So that's a very big difference in track there, and that can make all the difference as to what kind of impacts eastern North Carolina receives. And of course the GFS solution would affect more people, would cause more storm surge, and would be a lot more wind damage. So we're watching the models really closely as well as the real-time trends. Here's another model. This is the CMC. It agrees with the GFS on a landfall here just in the Morehead City, North Carolina area. And again, the Euro is a little bit farther to the east. So based on all the latest data and the information from the Hurricane Centers in the latest advisory, the heaviest impacts based on the current forecast track, as we said, we could see winds 85 to 90 miles per hour right along the Outer Banks here in extreme eastern North Carolina. 2 to 4 inches of rain with locally higher amounts, 3 to 4 foot storm surge. And then the further west you go, the winds will be a little bit less, but we could still see here across extreme eastern North Carolina, we could see winds of 60 miles per hour with higher gust and storm surge up to 3 feet right over the bay here. And then even further west, as we're moving inland here, Jacksonville, North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, could easily see wind gusts of 40 to 60 miles per hour with higher gusts and 2 to 3 inches of rain. And then further inland, east of Raleigh, Rocky Mount, down towards Myrtle Beach, we could see 25-30 mile per hour wind gusts. So this could all change. So imagine if this low pressure area was sitting right here, how a lot of these heavier impacts would be pushed inland. So 15, 20, 30 miles is going to make all the difference here. So we're going to be watching this really closely. And of course, we also want to take into account that the system could strengthen more than what the National Hurricane Center's forecast calls for, which is an 85 mile per hour Category 1 storm. It is important to note that this system will be in a very favorable environment to strengthen, and some of the models are forecasting a Category 2 hurricane, and we could see a larger wind field than forecast, and of course that could bring more effects inland here into southeastern North Carolina and into other portions of eastern North Carolina. So we're going to be watching this very close. Stay tuned to the National Hurricane Center first and foremost, as well as the updates here at the Hurricane Tracker app. If you don't have our app and you'd like to check it out so you can keep on top of this in real time, over the next 36 hours, head over to www.herdtracker.com, and all the information is available there. We'll be working around the clock to keep you updated. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good night.